This is Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wasey, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.
We're back.
Welcome to episode number 19.
19. That's French for 19.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. Thank you for explaining that to us all.
Next time you go to Quebec City, then you know one number in French.
19.
I need 19 poutines. 19 Bud Lights. You're at the bar after the show.
19. 19?
19. Give me 19 Bud Lights.
Is that how old I say I am?
I'm 19. I'm 19.
I'm 19. Okay, well, this is
There you
episode
go.
19. Cowboy Shit. It's Ted and Wasey
It's been a long day.
from Quebec.
Live from famously known as Little Quebec. The poutine belt of Calgary.
the Calgary Poutine Belt. The Okanagan Cider Belt.
Okanagan cider. #1 cider in Canada, baby. Put that in your pipe and drink it.
It's refreshing.
How about you should be drinking it out of your nice little cider mug I got you.
Oh, can I do that?
Yeah, you can do whatever. It's your mug, man.
I thought that was a camping mug.
It's your world. I'm just living in it.
Well, I don't know about that. You're just living. It's my house. You're just living. You're just living in it.
Yeah,
It's my basement. You just dwell in it.
It's your house. I'm just living in it, man.
It's funny because it's true.
It's funny because it's so true. I live in the basement at the end of the hall.
At the end of the hall.
It's a nice little place.
Right underneath of me. It's weird.
It is so kind of weird. That's not that weird. There's weirder things that can happen, but we're basically like roommates. It's like we're in bunk
We
beds.
are roommates.
It's like bunk beds,
Except,
it's full rooms.
yeah, there's a floor between us.
So it's bunk beds, basically.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room.
bunk beds.
A lot of room. Yeah. Adult bunk beds. I like that. It's a good one.
I mean, yeah. Except I had to tell Wasey that the Netflix and chill hours are over at 11 p.m.
Curfew.
I need to get my sleep.
Papa Ted.
Yeah. Gotta be quiet down there.
Shh. Damn kids.
What do I do? Just stomp on the floor?
Yeah.
Just. Hey.
We should do some.
Hey.
We should get some like
Cool it
a
down there.
string in a can.
String in a can. Oh, does that actually work?
Hey, shut the hell up down there. I've had enough. I'm trying to sleep.
I'm trying to go to sleep.
I'm trying to sleep. Yeah, could happen.
Could happen.
So we're back.
Oh.
Another episode. Another
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah, and last Monday we were like really hung over from Camrose, the old Big Valley Jamboree.
Oh yeah, we were there. Yep.
That's happened
time.
since last podcast,
That was a nice time.
wasn't it?
I had
We
a heck of a time.
We commandeered
Cody
Cody Boy Floyd's camper and now took on the Jamboree.
That's a hot rig.
That is a hot rig. I kind of want to buy it, but he's like, no, you don't want to buy it. Just keep renting it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good little thing to rent.
We had a good time.
We'll take it to Weasel's wedding. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, maybe we'll take it on some other adventures too. I don't know yet, but I kind of like it though.
Take the pod on the road.
We
in a camper.
should take the pod on the road, eh?
Road pod.
We should have done a podcast at the Jamboree.
That'd have been fun.
Right on top of Monty's birthday.
With Monty. And Griff as a special guest.
Special guest Griff.
After you get hauled out of the...
After he got stretchered out of the beer gardens.
Yeah.
Holy.
No boots on.
How about that?
That's a funny
Oh, man.
story.
How about that cake of Monty's too?
Huge cake. If you haven't seen it on social media, check it out.
People like the photo, but I don't know if they were liking the cat on the photo.
But not as many people know about Monty as well as we do and how much he hates cats.
So
That's the deal with the cat.
So we went to the Dairy Queen and I bought a cake with a cat on it. It was blue and it had a cake on it.
Monty
a cat on it.
hates cats.
Yeah.
He's a dog guy.
He I think he enjoyed the cake.
Oh yeah, it's ice cream cake, so you can't not enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something wrong with you if you don't. I mean, unless
Yeah.
you're lactose,
Yeah, then that's okay.
then you're okay. But if you're not lactose and you don't like ice cream cake, I hate you.
I don't think I've seen him laugh that hard in a while. Like
No, that was a good laugh.
He has some good chuckles here and there, but like, whew,
Mm-hmm.
that was a dandy
That was
laugh.
That was a good highlight of the event. That's for sure. My highlight, the pierogi truck.
Oh yeah.
I
At what?
dummied some
At what,
pierogies.
2 a.m. or when did you have your pierogs?
I had the first plate at about 12:26 in the a.m. Then I went into the beer gardens and
you went pierogies then beer,
and then back to pierogies.
and you didn't even puke. So you had
No,
two
I don't
servings
know.
of pierogies?
Yeah, I had 2 full plates of pierogies and sausage
Oh wow,
and a full party.
wow,
So whatever, it was awesome.
wow.
Yeah, so BBJ was fun. I did my first solo gig at Elnora this week as well.
Oh yeah, on
this
the
past
on
week.
the tunes. You took the podcast gear and did a full show.
Did
at
some
Elnora.
announcing.
Yeah.
I had fun. It was good. I could do more of that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe you will.
I got some compliments on my announcing. It was good
From all the people there.
from all 12 people. Great event though. I was glad to be a part of it.
And a good bull riding on Saturday, too.
I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good. That's always a good show.
Yeah, Elnora, good show. 20th year. How many
That's
bull
pretty cool.
ridings are there in Canada that have 20 years down?
Not many.
Oyen just turned 20 this year. But besides that, I was thinking...
What's the Glen Keeley at?
It would be at like
Would be pushing
12 or
15
13,
probably.
14. Saskatoon has had a bull riding for a long time. It's been different
Close.
events.
Manor Fun Days.
Manor, yeah. Manor's been around a long time.
What else off the top of my head?
I'm not sure.
There's lots.
But
there's not lots.
Lashburn had been around for quite a while, but it's
That's
not
done.
consistent now.
Mm-hmm.
Etonia had a lot of bull ridings.
Oh yeah, Etonia was
Lethbridge has been around for quite a while.
good. Yeah, Lethbridge is a good one.
Prince Albert's been around for
Yeah.
quite a while.
But they'd be like 10 years, wouldn't they?
Yeah, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. But not very many have 20 in a row.
No,
It's
and then
pretty
just
cool.
standalone bull ridings.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Oyen was one of the first ones,
Mm-hmm.
which would mean that Elnora would have been one of the first ones as well in the same year. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's pretty
kinda
cool.
neat. 20 years of bull bus.
They gained out a lot of money there too. Wasn't it like 150,000 over the 20 years to
Yeah, that they-
bull riders?
that they've paid out to bull riders, and another 150,000 they've donated to charity as well. And Elnora's done a heck of a job with the grounds there, and it's a cool.
That's
space.
an awesome. Like given the size of the community and how everybody buys into it all. It's
Oh, yeah.
pretty. I love seeing that kind of stuff. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty cool.
It was standing room only there on Saturday, and then
Same with Friday.
yeah, we had a huge rainstorm come through, but that's life,
That one video of Justin riding, that was pretty wild.
isn't it? With
Yeah.
the rain, yeah.
Did you
Pouring
see the one that Dale Brisby posted with that guy riding in the
Oh, yeah.
hailstorm?
It was
such
similar.
That's such a cool video.
Theirs was a little more aggressive, but similar. Okay, so today's show, episode number 19,
Hot episode
filmed in front of a live studio audience,
at Montana's
Signal Hill, Calgary, with our good friend
Southwest Calgary.
Terry Andryo of ATB Financial. He's our guest on the show, and that's coming up next.
You're listening to Cowboy Shit, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.
Live on location from Montana's in Signal Hill, Calgary, with our guest this week from ATB Financial, Terry Andryo. Terry, how are things going? It's been a while. We haven't got to catch up much this summer yet.
It's been pretty good. How about you guys?
Yeah, doing good. What do you think, Wasey?
Not too bad. I got my man mug, sitting at the table. Just had a nice barbecue feast. Feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we had a great supper here. Had some ribs, and Terry had some tacos, and Wasey had a few. Wasey and Cody Floyd also on location today. Had a, they had a romantic dinner for two. It was a little weird, but
Lady in the Trampish, eh? I was just waiting for the candlelight to come out.
they did not order spaghetti. Oh, man. Okay, Terry, we recently talked to a guy that you know very well on the show, Scott Schiffner. Scott and you have worked together since, I want to say, 2013. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's right around there. It was one of those relationships that took a couple of years to develop. We didn't instantly consummate this relationship. It kind of like dated for a while and then went at it, but it's really been good for both, I think for both parties.
That's probably how some of our folks, our listeners would know you. Can you speak to that relationship much with Scott, like in how it works and how it came to be? And you said you guys talked for a few years before you guys got something going. But I'm kind of interested. I want to talk about this as a sponsorship side of things for the podcast and just speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think the funny thing here that we looked at was, first off, were we aligned with values? Because that's the thing that, you want to make sure that you and I talked about this with the beer scenario earlier. We don't want somebody being sponsored by the ATB but banking with Nova Scotia, right? So we made sure that the values were aligned with the earnest of the relationship was there and the true sincerity of the relationship was there and benefit both sides. So we've got probably a 30-page contract in place, and probably we read about 2 paragraphs of that because it really boils down to the deliverables. And when Scott and I started talking, we met, we got introduced, and I don't even know who introduced us, but it really turned out really well right from the get-go in the beginning, and then we started looking at things and how Scott could add value to the relationship. So it wasn't about him riding and wearing our chaps or our logos. It was about his involvement with 4-H, his involvement with the riders, and he sits up on the chutes and he's not performing, he's helping out, and then there was that cross-pollinization with Jordan Eberle, and Scott told me the story that at Stampede, this guy's pulling his cinch and he's going, hey, do you want, 3,000 more followers? I'll just post something. And it turned out to be Jordan Eberle, who's one of our contracted athletes as well at the same time. So it wasn't done overnight, and it won't be done after Scott's retired either.
Can you speak to some of the details of that?
Yeah, we kind of set out expectations of like how many performances, how many visits, how many branch visits we do. Social media becomes a big part of it, where he travels to, how much social media he posts. And he's slacking right now. He's winning and he's slacking, of all things, but I think he adapted it very quickly. He has a good following, and those are things that we're looking at as we start to build a stable of athletes. How much of a social impact do they have? In Scott's case, he really came across as having the ability to reach out to other audiences, not just in the rodeo scene and not just bull riding, but, with his 4-H and with his 3 daughters and what he does, and the fact that he traveled with Premier Harper over to China, and so the things that he does that allows us to get to a new audience, not just from bull riding or not just from rodeo. And I think those are things, as we get into more relationships, those are the things we're looking for, because if we want the core rodeo business or the segment, we can get a rider and we can do that, but we want that broad base to go out. And I think bull riding was a natural one for us as we see the PBR starting to explode, right? Ownership, Jerry Jones takes his stake in it now, and he's gone mainstream. It's on TV, it's on cable TV, it's on public TV. So bull riding was a natural fit for us to reach out and have that ability to cross-pollinize. And probably one of the best things that we did was Travel Alberta came to Calgary with a whole bunch of outfitters from South America, and we brought Scott, and we introduced him, played a little bit of his bio visually, and all of a sudden, after he spoke for about 15 minutes, everybody lined up for his autograph, because everybody wanted to meet a real cowboy and hang out with a cowboy. And when we can do stuff like that, that's a huge thing for us.
And Scott, you say Scott's a real cowboy, and that's not just in the bull riding sense, but ranches every day and takes care of animals every day, and he's not just a cowboy in the rodeo arena.
No, that, and add to that the concussion story that he tells. We do the food thing. We had Matty Madison, one of the prominent chefs out of Toronto, come to his ranch a couple of years ago, did some film on Vice. Yeah, so Matty Madison was doing a broadcast on culinary adventures, and I got a phone call from John Jackson, a prominent chef in Calgary here, who owns Charcut, and John says, Terry, you got to know somebody who's ranching close that we can go out and do some videotape, who's, good in front of the camera and who can be spontaneous and everything like that. And first guy I thought of was Scott. So we took Matty out there and spent the afternoon. So Scott's on Vice now. So just a little episode, but it's those other things that we look at, how they can help the relationship on both sides, both from a visibility for Scott and the performer, as well as ATB.
Just tying into what you talk about with Scott and everything, like what's it going to take for like our other high level guys and stuff, like to market themselves and get them into that kind of same level or like kind of relationships that Scott has himself in? Like what do you see that guys need to do to kind of get to that point of their career?
It's a two-sided question or a two-sided answer that I'm going to say. I think there's the approach that everybody's trying to do is everybody's trying to hook their wagons to the big brands. You start to see brands like Yeti up here. Everybody wants Yeti. Everybody wants Wrangler. Everybody wants, nobody wants Marlboro or Copenhagen anymore, right? You don't want those. But then you look at someone like Fallon Taylor. And, I mean, she's got absolutely no sponsors, so she's gone out and created her own brand. She's made wearing a helmet luxurious and glamorous for young girls. She colors her hair. She's got a fashion line of clothing, and she's created her own brand. So if I were to start up something like this, if I was the athlete on this side of the coin, I'd probably look at social media, the way that they're doing social media in the U.S. on a big scale of endorsements and product and unique utilization of a product, and attempt it that way, rather than trying to circle the same wagon that everybody's trying to do, right? Like if you look at the patches, they're pretty consistent with Monster energy drinks and Stanley Tools and Yeti and Wrangler and those, but you're not seeing the intrinsic movement to go to other brands that don't associate it with it. Like I'd look at things as what value do I bring to the table in a relationship, and I'd look at something like AAA, which is the Alberta Automotive Association, and say, I'm traveling a lot. I can bring some value by writing articles about local food, local beer, and create content to help your brand. So I'd look at it the opposite way of probably everybody's looking at it right now, and see, how can I add value to that company? So if I was Zeke Thurston, I'd be hitting up Travel Alberta as well as maybe Vegas Tourism, because he's performing there every single year, right? So you look at things that aren't directly into the industry or into that audience, but how do you get outside that audience? You talked about those new coolers and stuff like that. How do I get there? So I'd be looking at product and companies and services that aren't participating in the rodeo industry, rather than everybody going after the Coors and the Budweiser and stuff like that. I'd be looking outside and go, what are the trends that are occurring on the outside coming inward? So stuff like Zappos, stuff like water companies. Like you would have thought years ago, everybody was chasing Winston and Marlboro. Not anymore, right?
So where would someone start though if they were going to look into a company like that though?
I don't know the honest answer, like right off the top of my head, but I think that you got to look at yourself and say, what value do I want to bring to the table? Am I winning? Am I constantly on that podium? Because those are the things Scott brought, right? He's a winner. He's won national championships. He's won, the CFR multiple times. So he's constantly on that, everybody's top of their lips. Scott Schiffner. So you want to make sure that you're performing well and up to speed. After that, it's kind of like, what values do I have, or what do I what would I spend my money on? If I'm buying Boulay boots, then you'd naturally migrate to something like that you'd want to wear, right? For me today, I'm not wearing Wranglers, I'm wearing Levi's, so I'd migrate to a Levi or something like that. So it's where you spend your money, how your money is spent, and who you align your values with.
That's a really good way to put it. Like you mentioned earlier, like you don't want to sponsor somebody who be ATV and sponsor somebody who banks with CIBC, or like we talked about when we were eating supper, like you want to, if you're sponsored by Labatt and you're not drinking Labatt products on, like spending your own money on that kind of stuff, but that really, like, the person doesn't really think of that little thing like that, and it's a key, like a huge key to it all.
Those things too, and then you got to look at intrinsic little things like mobile devices. What brands you migrate to, the headphones that we're wearing tonight. But there's a lot of cowboys and rural people who enjoy those brands too and want to wear them. So, who becomes the spokesman for the rodeo circuit if you're wearing Beats or Skull Candy or whatever the brand is, right? Apple versus Microsoft, or Apple versus Google phones. Google phones are new in their technology with their laptops. So you look at things that people use in their regular day life, but maybe aren't into that vertical sector yet, and say, I can emerge with some kind of new profile. I don't think I ever saw Stanley Tools 20 years ago in rodeo. It was the farm equipment companies, the Heston Rodeos, Heston Farm Equipment, Case, John Deere, stuff like that. But now we're starting to see different companies come in and out of agriculture and rodeo. Those are the things I'd be looking for, is who's not in there that should be in there. Travel companies, airline companies. Look at WestJet. Why wouldn't I go see WestJet? I'm traveling a lot.
What about Tide laundry detergent on a rainy, muddy Stampede?
I thought of that one because I think that would be a great promo for the Calgary Stampede, right? On a rainy, wicked day in Stampede, Tide would be your daily sponsor, because that would be like a pop-up opportunity for them. The other ones I think of is, even with the Stampede, is Bud Light. That experience that they had where they flew a certain amount of people to the baseball games or to the football games, to the Super Bowl. Why wouldn't they do that for the Calgary Stampede? To me, that no-brainer. Or if you look into the technology end of things with cameras, like why wouldn't Canon take on somebody in a sponsorship, or Nikon, or what's that new phone that comes out of China now?
Huawei, I think, eh?
Hockey Night in Canada, blue-collared audience, right? So you kind of look at stuff like that. You look at tool companies, you look at car companies. Those are the natural fits. But I think as technology comes into play, you look at the people who aren't entering the market yet and look for opportunities to get in front of an audience that's exciting. I go back to the UFC. I go back to wrestling, the WWF. Look at the brands that are associated with that audience and what they're interested in. I think another one for UFC isn't Jack Daniels part of it? So again, heavy skewed male, active lifestyle, and love their physical sports, right? Their aggressive sports. So, but what's that next brand that's coming in? Certainly a Lululemon's not going to work.
I think part of what you're getting at is something that hasn't happened as much in rodeo, in the sense that I don't think rodeo, a lot of our folks know who the fans are. Like, I don't think there's been a lot of studies on it. There's been not a lot of data collected. Like, the Rodeo Association doesn't do it. Like, unless it's a cowboy, like, we kind of got to do all our own homework to make stuff like this happen.
I agree. And, Chad Bestplug and I had these conversations when he was starting up Alpha Bull, and I said, why don't you go see Nitro Circus? To me, that's the epitome of alternative sports that bring in motocross, bring in action, bring in death-defying feats, and a younger demographic who wants to see a car crash. And I think that's what people come to rodeo for. The diehards go there to cheer for their favorites, but I think the people who are emerging and coming into the sport are going there just like UFC, just like Nitro Circus, to see a car crash. Like, that's why the bull riding event, in my eyes, is looked after and sought after, is because people know that there's going to be a car crash. It's just, how serious is that car crash going to be? So what brands fit with the car crash? And the ones that aren't residing in rodeo are sitting on the outside looking in at Nitro Circus, or X Games are big. When you look at the X Game, everything in X Game, both winter and summer sports, are huge sponsored events, right? So you look at, I'd look at companies, and I know they're in the U.S., but you look at Allstate Insurance and mayhem occurs. I'd be looking at them and go, well, mayhem occurs in rodeo all the time, so to me, there's a fit, right? So I'd go backwards on a lot of my things and look at, where's a fit, and the Allstate plays a lot in college football, and there's a lot of mayhem in college football, both on and off the field. But when you look at stuff like that, you look at opportunities, insurance companies, Aflac, and companies like that, and you go, they're not in rodeo, yet you think they'd be a natural fit for something like that, because again, high action, high impact sports, the fact that it's on a national stage right now with the PBR is a huge component. So I'd be looking at those other sports and start picking them apart.
What do you think is maybe holding rodeo and bull riding back at this point? What is the next step, or what are you? Yeah, you're having a chuckle right now. What do you think needs to maybe change for us to get to that next step too?
I think I'm going to sound like a bigot, and I'm laughing because to me it seems like it's an all-white sport. When you see stuff like the Maple Leafs and Nazem Kadri, East Indian kid, but there's a huge following of, once you have them in your sport, they'll attend to it. Like when you look at the Stampede, or I was at Strathmore last week, the audience itself is so white. It's so vanilla, right? And we are the minority. We will be in a few years. We will be the minority, and unless the sport changes stuff and gets people involved with it, or makes it interesting for new Canadians to attend. Like, have you guys ever been to the Houston Rodeo? Okay, what's the audience look like in Houston for the rodeo?
Mostly Spanish.
Exactly. So you know where they're responding and how they're responding, and they're probably coming because there's a lot more Spanish riders and participants in the events as you get closer to the Mexican border, right? So you have to look at it and say, we're going to have to change things around for rodeo in its true essence, not the way that the sport's been run, but get people active who can bring in other people. When I talked about Scott and his ability to reach different cultures and reach different audiences, color is one of them. We purposely take Scott to the Ismaili breakfast every year at Stampede, where there's 5,000 or 6,000 people who don't know who Scott is, but we introduce them because I think it's a need, because they're coming to Stampede for the food and for the rides and maybe for the post-event show, but they're not coming for the rodeo. And unless we embrace them and get them involved with it, rodeo could start to dwindle down gradually. It'll never go away, but as we see stuff like Chuck Wagon, there's no new Chuck Wagon drivers coming in to replace all the guys who are retiring, and probably in the last year we've had 10 guys retire from Chuck Wagons, and 1 or 2 entries come back in as new ones, like Dayton Sutherland. So I think we've got to watch for stuff like that. And you look at other sports, they don't care about, like the CFL has an import policy, import rule. They have to protect X amount of Canadians. No other league in the world has a protection status. So when you look at soccer, it's blended pretty well. You look at the NFL football, it's blended pretty well. NBA basketball, they're drafting guys from China, they're drafting guys from Yugoslavia. They don't care where they're coming from, they just want the best athletes. And I think when we look at rodeo, we got to be considering that too.
How do we get a kid from the inner city or from a different culture? How do they get involved in our sport, though? Like, how would that even come about?
I think, I don't think there's a defined answer to how you do that. But I think what you do is, when we go to Ranchman's every year just before Stampede with Sheldon Kennedy and those guys, we bring in the kids up front. And the kids up front program are kids who can't afford to go to a rodeo or never been exposed to a rodeo. So the last 3 years we've had 20 or 30 kids every year. And we're exposing kids who have normally wouldn't see a rodeo or get that close to a rodeo. So I think it's a grassroots initiative. You can't force people, new Canadians, to participate in what we used to do for now 100 years or 200 years, right? You got to let it come at you naturally, but I think you just got to keep exposing it to them and getting them aware of the event and get them up and close and personal. I mean, even the younger audience, when I look at my kids, my kids are a little bit different because they're exposed. They come out to Scott's Place and they brand cattle, so they're aware of that. But most of the kids that live in downtown Calgary have never been to a rodeo, don't go to the Calgary Stampede for the rodeo. They go for Ranchman's, or they go for Cowboys or Knoxville's, right? Put up their hand on how many been to a rodeo and how many know the riders and how it works and the rules and the point scoring system and all of those things. Probably come out with a 0 average on everything. So when we get an opportunity, whether it's the rodeos later in the fall where they're at Agrium Center, is we try to get people involved, like from Date Night YYC, and bring them to them who have never been to a rodeo. And the first priority for us is to get them a shoot tour, right? You've seen that. We come behind the stage, expose them to them, let them see the animal health, let them meet the riders, let them understand what's going on, how they're scored, and now hopefully they can embrace that. but I think it's going to take a while. So you're not going to see it in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be years before that, but we can't give up. Got to keep exposing it to them.
I think it's going the right way with our PBR Canada events and having them on TSN and having them in the big cities. I think that's going the right way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's starting to get there, and I think, with Scott retiring and being a little bit more visible on stuff like PBR Canada helps out because he understands the sport and he can explain it to him. And he doesn't need to dummy it down, right? He just can explain it in his natural way. And I think that's some of the things that we liked about working with Scott is his ability to speak very openly and very candidly, but very professionally and understand the sport. So if you're getting an insider perspective, him or Cody Snyder the same way, they know the sport, they're renowned, they're rewarded, they're visually out there and know what's going on and can call a spade a spade. But I think you need more of that. And I think it has to become a little bit more mainstream to get liked.
And getting a little more mainstream, how do you think we get more mainstream?
I think just continue it. I mean, I think that the one thing that I noticed, and Scott talked about it with, is having the riders and the next generation of riders having ability to capture their rides online on their phones instantly and push them out. I know we don't use Periscope anymore, but Twitter Live or Facebook Live or our Instagram is posting those and just getting that following. But I think those are some of the things that we look at when we sponsor people is how many followers they have, but who's following them, because that's a bigger concern about who's following them rather than just having the amount of followers or the likes, and that is the interactions, the conversations that go on between the riders and their audience. That's important. So when we look at stuff that Zeke does for us or stuff that Scott looks at it, we're not just looking at how many tweets they do or how many likes they would get, but how many conversations or how many chats they're having online about certain things, or the comments that are going on between the rider and the audience. Those things are important. So I think social media is a big thing, and I think we're lacking at it in this sport. I think there's some people who do it phenomenal, and those are people who are going to find sponsorship really easy. And there's people who are learning, but I think you got to embrace it and try it and just keep pushing on it. So many businesses now don't even start off with PR or advertising campaign. Everything starts living online and social, and it usually talks about a community, right? Some form of why I want to do it. We talked about craft beer earlier. There's a community of craft beer people, and they'll know the newest, best variety of beer in Calgary that's available just by the social media, nothing else. So I think, if we keep pushing social media and be living in the moment and have an opportunity to say what we want to say about the sport, good or bad, and be transparent about things that happen. Because I think the biggest naysayers are the animal health people that we deal with and how we condition and how we keep our stock.
But as soon as you take someone on a shoot tour like that, they completely understand that it's totally a myth.
Yeah, the strategy is called boiling the ocean. That's really what it boils down to. Is, in fact, Mo from Montana's, if you talk to him, we took him on a shoot tour of the Calgary Stampede about 3 years ago. Him and his wife Rhonda came with us backstage. And again, opens your eyes. They didn't understand the scoring. They didn't understand it. But now if you ask Mo if he wants to go to the Calgary Stampede, the only place he wants to go is back behind the chutes, right? Hang out with the riders and go behind the barns in the stables for the chuck wagons. That's where people want to be, because that's where you get the authentic stories. You get the authentic opportunities, So I think that's where it's going to live, Ted, online. Plus you can download, you can watch events occur like this weekend, Whitecourt. You can probably capture everything that was happened in Whitecourt instantly in the moment watching it if you just stay close to social media, right?
It's true, and it's what we're doing a lot with our PBR Canada stuff. We have it on TSN, or you can watch the highlights back on Ride Pass now on our Monster Energy tour. Like, it's very available, and we even with our tour, we send the riders their clips so they can post them on their own channels, so they get a full broadcast quality clip on their own channels, which helps them and helps us at the same time.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to do is build a sport, but build individual brands at the same time, right? You've got a rider who's concerned about his brand and how he operates, and then you've got the association or the power of the segment that's building their brand, like PBR Canada does too.
I want to go back to your story, Terry. And we mentioned concussions once, and we talked about this before, but talk about your sports career and the end to that.
So you asked me about my education at supper time. Now it's time to go into the sports, but I went on a scholarship to the University of North Dakota to play football. My first year right out of high school, and I didn't last there that long, primarily because I wasn't coached well. Football was a new emerging sport in Canada, so when you go into a U.S. system, you realize quickly that you're undercoached. And that's no one's fault but mine. Came back to Canada, played 4 years in the Canadian Junior Football League with the Prairie Division with the Winnipeg Hawkeyes. In the meantime, I got offers, 2 or 3 of them, to go to the U.S. back into California and play California. But, in the old days it's kind of like bull riding. You last the stinger. You get concussed. You didn't know you got concussed. You got your bell rung, and you went through that. I played high level hockey. I refereed high level hockey. I did roller hockey. So I got multiple blows to the head. And it's funny when you think about it, but 2 or 3 years ago I was diagnosed with Parkinson, and some of the questions that they talked about when they asked me is like, did you play high level sport and do you play contact sports? Yes. Do you live in the country? Yes. Do you have access to pesticides? Yes. Did you drink well water? Yes. Do you remember every concussion that you had? No. So it took its toll on me, and I'm kind of glad now with the 4 kids at home that they played all the high level sports, that the boys aren't playing sports anymore, just primarily because they see what condition that I'm in today. One of the things that we did about 4 years ago is we brought Chris Nowinski, who runs a brain bank down in Boston, and he came up and talked about the education of concussions and how to control things that we can control. And one of the things that I learned, playing sports at a younger age, was that contact was part of the game at every point, practice or game. And if you take the practice component and control a practice component, you stand a better chance at it. One of the things that we did with our kids' football clubs was when we brought Chris up and talked about this is control the things that we can control. So we took hitting out of practice completely. And 4 or 5 years ago, if you asked me if you took hockey and you took the contact out of hockey at a young age, I would have went, you're crazy. The purist in me says you got to teach the kids properly how to hit at a young age and accept how to hit and how to take a hit. Now I look at things and I'm a different perspective completely, just primarily because of the things that you can't control. You're going to get hit in the game, and the play position that I played was an interior lineman. So every play that you're butting heads with someone or had contact with someone. Hockey was the same way. We lived in an era where the emergence of visors and face masks were just coming into play. So we had respect for each other. If someone high-sticked you in the face, you high-sticked them back in the face, right? Because you had no protection. And I think nowadays, a lot of the protection companies, I don't want to say they're to blame, but certainly the kids today, and you guys fill into that, there's an invincibility component of it that you can go in and get hit or take a hit because you're completely shrouded with the best in protective equipment. When I was growing up, we didn't have that type of things. And you see that with even bull riding or rodeo. The emergence of neck braces and the emergence of safeties and helmets and stuff like that. The helmets aren't there to prevent a concussion, but they're to prevent even more damage that potentially could get hurt. Yes, I'm on this kick. I'm really on a heavy kick, and it comes down to now we know a lot more about what's gone on with concussions and how it affects mental health and depression, and we've seen it in our own lives personally. And you don't want to see it happen to another person. So I'm a little bit of an advocate. A lot of the guys who are retired who maybe weren't a high profile in the NHL are coming out and speaking out very loudly and very candidly about, their mental state right now. And that's a shame. And I'm not a huge betting man, but if I put money on it, once Sidney Crosby retires, he'll become the biggest advocate for concussions and mental health, because I think his body's been just tortured. And there's a guy who's the poster child of the NHL right now. He's not going to say anything about concussions or his mental health state. But I think once his career's over, I think that shoe's going to drop really quickly. And, Carla McLeod and I were talking the other day at the Canada Winter Games in 2019 going to Red Deer. And we said, they're trying to restrict it and trying to control it in the NHL and the NFL. But when they see a violation, a guy gets suspended for a day or a game or 2 games. Right. And it has to be, you got to match the punishment up with the crime, right? And just say, in order to stop this and stop the purposeful headshots that go on in either sport or any of the sports, you got to punish these guys a little bit more, like 10 days or 10 games out of their pocket and see what happens then. Because chances are they'll start to slow these things down. And no one wants to be messed up for life. Can you imagine being a pro athlete like a Sidney Crosby who's making millions of dollars of money and making that decision on your career, going, do I give up the money or do I give up the life? Because that's what you're doing, is you're shortening your life potentially by a few years just because of what you don't know what you're getting into, and it's all neurological. I got diagnosed 4 years ago with carpal tunnel syndrome. That's what they thought I had. And then I went to a neurologist, and within 2 minutes he diagnosed me with early onset Parkinson's.
I guess like going back to what you're saying about like having all the available resources and guys like knowing and taking advantage, like that's like the, I think especially with like rodeo guys too and stuff, like it goes back to, like I know it's part of that video with like the Rodeo Sports Medicine team and that one Scott was in. It's like people are like there's that mentality where the sports medicine guys are they're like against you, like trying to stop you from competing. but really like they want you to keep going as bad as you want to keep going. And like I was fortunate enough, like I'm really good friends with Brandon. He helped me along with my struggles or whatever you want to call it with head injuries, and he got me hooked up with Dr. Benson at the COP clinic, and he's an amazing guy, and like he's kind of the one who put it into perspective for me when I was having like all the trouble towards the end of it. And he's just kind of like, if you look at yourself 3 years ago, like, would you be getting these symptoms and stuff from like taking the mine? Like, I'd lie on my back and I'd have symptoms come back. Like, it just like, to kind of like put it into perspective. It's like, well, no, like 3 years ago, I could take that little hit and go. And then just like having that outside looking in, or like that, having that resource to go and talk to you about it. And like, he's the one who put the question forward to me, was like, is the risk worth the reward anymore, kind of thing. So like taking advantage of those resources is huge. And like, they're out there and they're for free for the most part, especially for the rodeo guys. So it's like, it's so huge to like realize that they're there to help you, not to prevent you from doing what you want to do.
No one's there to slow down your career, right? But it's taking those precautions to understand, what potentially lies ahead for you and what risk you want to take. Like I saw Jay Moody at Stampede a couple weeks ago. He looks like one banged up cowboy. Like he doesn't look like he's fully recovered from the last episode that he had. And then I hadn't seen, but Chase Outlaw got thrown off, and I saw him at Stampede. He looked great, and then a week later something happened in Montana where he got into a wreck, right? So I think everybody on a pro career, I think we know a lot more than we did 30 years ago, and we probably know a lot more than we did 5 years ago, and we'll continue to learn on those things. But take advantage of what other people's episodes are learnings, so you don't make the same mistake. And like I said, I use my boys as a reference because they look at me and I've got an artificial knee, I've got an artificial hip, I've got pins in my teeth, I've got Parkinson's. They look at me and go, I don't think we want to be like Dad in that way in 20 or 30 years. So, the decisions they made, I applaud them for making those decisions, just primarily because they were playing the same contact sports that I was playing at the same level, and I don't want to see them walking around at 30 years old or 40 years old going, I wish I would have made that decision when I was 20, when I was smart enough with all the people around it. So use the resources, use other people. And, Chad and I talked about this a few months ago. He says he applauds me for being very vocal about my situation with Parkinson's. But I said, I think, for me, I want to leave the world in a better place and help educate those people who are behind me going, I had that same scenario 20 or 30 years ago. Don't make the same mistake that I did, because we know just a ton more than we did back then, right? It was just normal, and yet you see sports like soccer or rugby aren't experiencing the same things that the NFL or the hockey, and that's primarily, I'm in belief that it's around the equipment that we're wearing. When you strip down to nothing and play rugby and you don't see the concussion issues that they do they have them? Sure they do, but not in the volumes that we see because of both the recipient and the enforcer that goes after them in hockey and in football.
Talking about the future, what does the future look like for you in the next few years as far as ATB and in the rodeo business and what you're doing moving forward? You spoke about it a little bit as far as leaving the world in a better place and explaining what's gone on with yourself with Parkinson's and whatnot, but what does the future look like for you, Terry?
You know what, I really don't know. I'm just kind of going at it as I normally did. I don't look at it too far in advance, and I don't look at it too far behind me either. It's just taking one day at a time and looking at it. I think one of the things I've been fortunate enough to do, and this is where I talk about that cross-pollination, is I have a big audience or a big following both rurally and urban. So I can play in urban Calgary, Edmonton, or I can play in rural Alberta because that's where I love to be, and I know that those things are important. So I think my future is really based on where I want to go and how I want to do it. So don't give it too much thought on a regular basis. I'm in a comfortable zone. I think the people like me at ATB. I like what I do. I think I've got a good following internally as well as externally, that I've got some fans that we've managed to work together, and it's come from a lot of hard work. So I really don't put too much thought into it. I do want to leave the world in a better place. And I think that's everything that everybody I talk to is in the same boat. Is, you want to leave it in a better place than you saw it in initially.
Our last question is what your definition of cowboy shit is.
Well, I'm good friends with the manager of Aerosmith, and there's an album that they put out about 20 years ago called A Night in the Ruts. So you either can spend a night in the ruts or kick it right in the nuts. That's what cowboy shit is to me.
I like that. So did you just say you're good friends with the manager of Aerosmith?
Well, Rich is manager of Foreigner and Aerosmith and a whole bunch of other bands that are out of my era. So I got to meet him through a company called Energy Disruptors. He sits on the board, and we've had some good conversations about the change in music, and where music's going over the last 20 years. It's no longer about selling albums. It's about selling merchandise and tickets and being entertainer on stage and streaming music. You're not selling full albums anymore. You're putting out singles. You're putting out, EPs. You're putting out things on iTunes at an arm. So that's one of the best things about my job. I get to meet all these interesting people, right? I never know who I'm going to meet today or tomorrow, but it's usually a cool conversation that comes out of it.
What can you tell us about what you do? I'm curious about that now. What else is it that you work on in a day? What does a day look like for you, Terry? Day in the life, yeah.
Every day's different. It's completely different. If you talk to my dad only thinks I drive around the province and drink beer and eat food. That's his theory of what I do as a job, but every day is different. Working in agriculture, we focused a growth pattern and a strategy based on, serving local and abiding by local. And I think, ATB could be looked at as one of the pioneers to grow the craft beer industries in Alberta, as well as the distilled product, as well as the food, and really energizing and ramping up that local story. So every day is different, and I think that's one of the cool things that I've been known for is anything that I tweet or post on social media, it's usually about other people, not about me. And usually good photography, Todd Coral contributes to that, having access to Todd really good. But going to breweries, going to meaderies, going to good restaurants, hanging out with some good farming people, some agricultural people, and then looking at the urban scene of picking hops with Village Brewery and getting involved with projects, doing folk fests. So every day's different. I can't label what I do from 9 o'clock or 5 to 5 o'clock, because sometimes the day starts at 5 or 6 in the morning and sometimes it ends at midnight. So there is no such thing as a typical day.
What would you explain to people as your title there then?
Well, I'm the director of community initiatives, which is really broad and open based, which means I can do anything I want, but it really circles around partnerships and community sponsorships. So involved with the Flames, involved with the Stampeders, involved with the Oilers and the WHL and the AJHL, as well as rodeo, as well as folk fest, arts and culture. So we touch things that you guys may not see in the segment, but certainly on an urban side, we were just involved with the Calgary Folk Festival, which is a kind of a cool event that we got to see a whole different perspective. I got introduced to it 2 years ago, went dressed like this, blue jeans and cowboy boots, and I was ill prepared. Everybody was in shorts and Birkenstocks. So I learned pretty quick I got to go upgrade my wardrobe if I want to attend this and not look out of place. But it takes me into certain parts of the province that I've never been to yet, and I have a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Being in the banking industry and with the people that listen to our show, I don't know who they all are, but from the cowboy side of things, what should our average cowboy, average listener, what do they know about banking and that side of things? Like, what is the most important thing that the consumer should know about a bank?
Well, I think like anything, and I look at myself as a ruralite. Everything that I've done and built on, and I see it in my parents and I see it in my kids, and anybody in rural Alberta is really, it's about the relationship. You can have a commodity, because that's what a bank really trades on, is a commodity. We sell product, but it's knowing someone there in case something goes right or something goes wrong, that you can have that connection to it. So I think, we lived our lives in rural towns. We know people, we trusted them. And I think that's what the agriculture and the rodeo, community is about, is trust in a relationship. Most of our business comes from referrals. It doesn't come from advertising and marketing. It comes from people recommend somebody and they know who to go to connect them. So, but I think the industry is changing dramatically. When you look at that global sense, and I talked a bit about color earlier, when you go to Northern Africa and you get off the plane as a new person in Northern Africa, the first thing you do is buy a phone. And usually now those phones come with a service provider, and those service providers are now banks. And people are used to doing stuff digitally now and electronically. So some of that relationship component is going to go away. The human nature still wants to migrate back to knowing people. In case something is wrong, I can pick up the phone and call Terry. So the banking industry is transforming very, very rapidly. I mean, I've got Apple Pay on my phone. I can just tap now and go. I don't even have to put in my authorization code or anything like that. So, and with everything that's good, there's always those bad things that go with it, right? Heard some stories a couple weeks ago about a guy in New York City that walks through the subways with a machine, and everybody with a close frequency, the tap, whatever your tap limit is getting tapped. So he can walk through a train car and get thousands of dollars just by doing nothing but walking close to the people with a tap authorization on their card. So everything that's good about tap, there's always something that's bad about tap. we'll probably see a lot of disruption. We'll start to see the emergence of, there's always skepticism around Apple being a bank now because they've got all your information. You're buying stuff with them. You're trading on buying credits for iTunes and downloads and stuff like that. Technically, they're a bank. They're holding money. So we've heard, Apple talking about getting into the industry. We've talked about we've heard Google getting into the industry. So we'll probably see a little bit more disruption. And it's kind of like the big guys may take them out. So you may see RBC or you may see a CIBC, like the beer industry, buying the smaller players out who have a territorial impact. So you may see stuff like that occur, but certainly I don't have a magic crystal ball in mind, but I know there's a lot of change going on in that industry because, the millennials, and you guys are part of that generation. You trust everything online. You probably do a ton more purchasing than I've done. You've probably done more in a month than I've done in a year online with your purchasing. And you guys are shaking your head. You're going, yeah, that's exactly what it's about. So we think banking is going to start to shift a little quicker to that type of format and platform.
Well, thanks for taking the time to do this, though, and thanks for taking the time to meet us here and set this up, too, for the supper here at Montana's.
Well, thanks. No problem. We got to thank Mo and his partners for allowing us to kind of jump in and take over the place. And the birthday parties are gone, so we don't have to listen to the happy birthday songs or the moose antlers walking around. But thanks, Mo. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Wasey.
That's Terry Andryo from ATB Financial, and this is episode 19 of Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wasey. We'll be back.
You're listening to Cowboy Shit, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.
So how about that chat we had with Terry?
That's pretty awesome, man. I like taking the pod out and about to
It's
different
fun.
places,
It's fun to go adventuring
different
with the pod,
different settings and stuff. And it was really cool. Terry's a very interesting guy to talk to, and having somebody's perspective on stuff like who wasn't traditionally around, like growing up in the rodeo scene or not being around for so much is pretty cool to see a guy, especially with the great business mind like his. It's pretty cool to hear his opinions and perspectives on things. I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Me too.
He's a good guy to talk to in general.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Big fan of that one.
I'm, again, appreciate Terry for taking the time to be on the show and meeting us at Montana's and Mo Aladdin of Montana's for supper and
Yeah, that was huge.
having us out.
Huge play.
It's fantastic.
Great. We're fed, we're watered.
And we're full and we're ready for bed.
Make sure you go check out your own local Montanas.
Yeah. Montana's, Swiss Chalet, or Harvey's. Any of the above in Western
All of the
Canada.
above, eat there.
Eat there.
They got food
Tell them we sent
to
you.
eat. Tell them the pod sent you.
Tell them we sent you.
They're probably not going to get you anything, but that's fine.
Hey, but you can
Still tell them
if you go there on your birthday,
wear the hat.
sing the song, eat the cake because it's your day.
You get cake there?
Yeah, that's why you tell us your birthday.
Damn.
You didn't know we were trying to get Cody to do it, but he wasn't down
We
or
should
what?
have done it. Someone should just took a bullet for the boys.
That one was going to be Cody's, but he didn't do it.
Rude.
How about that man mug that you got?
That's a huge beer. That's probably
That
like
was
a
neat.
gallon of beer.
32 ounces.
How many ounces in a gallon?
It's not a gallon.
Oh.
Probably a half gallon.
Half a gallon.
I bet you 64
couple,
ounces is.
bet you that was
is
a
gallon.
couple liters of beer.
Let's look at this.
Let's go off liters because we're Canadians. So how many
32 ounce.
liters in 32
liters.
ounces?
Oh, it's not even a liter. 0.94.
Really? It's not even a liter of beer?
No.
I suck.
You're a pussy.
That's a huge beer though. It was good.
A liter of beer. It's basically a liter of beer.
Basically a liter of beer.
Liter of beer. Yeah.
A liter of cola.
No, but beer. You had a nice raspberry beer too.
Yep. That's as far as we're gonna go with that one. It's good. No, it's good. Like I said before, it's fun taking the pod on the road, and
Yeah.
I'm
New
a
location?
huge fan of that actually.
Yeah?
It's really cool.
Yeah?
I like that a lot. Yeah.
So
So
should we do it again somewhere?
we probably should.
I guess the next show. Oh, next show. It's gonna be a good one.
Can we talk about it?
Nope. It's gonna be a surprise.
Ooh, baby. Gonna be a hot one.
It's gonna be good. Probably our most famous guest yet.
Teaser.
Yeah. We're talking to
Canadian
a Canadian
icon.
Yeah, exactly. That's the words exactly that I was gonna say.
I
Canadian icon.
read your lips.
Probably one of the most famous people in our whole country, actually.
When people think of Canada, they think of this
Our next guest
person.
on episode 20, the 20th episode.
It's like our birthday.
It pretty much is.
This is huge, people. If you're gonna listen, if you listen to only one episode
You're gonna
in your whole life, this is the one episode you want to listen to.
You're gonna want to
like not this one we're on right now,
Like
but
this
the
is
next
this one's,
one.
This one's really good too.
Yeah, but like if there's one episode you
If
listen
there's
to,
two, it'd be this one and then the next
you
one.
basically gotta
'Cause
listen. Like to hear me
you're
say
already
this, you have to.
You're already listening to this one.
But if there's one, that's the one.
One more.
If there, yeah.
It's another one.
That's
'cause they're
the
already
one.
listening to this.
You
one.
want to listen to that one
You want to listen to the next one
because
too.
it's huge.
It's gonna be huge.
Huge. It's probably gonna change the game in our pod life.
Yeah, we might have to retire after that one. Might be
Shut her
just
down.
it.
Yeah.
20 shows, we're done.
How about our
3
boy
minutes.
Laundart, man, finishing 4th in Tulsa this weekend? That's huge.
Yeah, he did awesome. He went up 8 spots in the world standings.
Yeah.
Shitty news for Brock Radford fucking up his knee.
Yeah, that's
He didn't get back to me
Trouble.
today. I asked him if he got his MRI yet. No.
hopefully
report.
it's not as bad as they say at least, or he can still manage without it. But
I think he's gonna go regardless.
well,
There's
yeah.
the thing with the knees; they can't really fuck him up any worse, right?
No, it just hopefully doesn't hinder like his actually like riding.
Yeah. Hopefully, you can still snap him out for. A bunch
Yeah,
of 90s
that's the
and keep
ticket.
winning.
Yeah, so no, it's good, man.
Yeah, Lonnie
I'm
though.
pumped about that.
Lonnie's got more points now than it took to make the World Finals last year.
There you go.
So could be there.
I would love
We'll
to see
see.
that. I'm his number 1 fan.
I'm a big fan of Lonnie West as
Mhm.
well.
That's my boy.
Team Canada report.
Team Canada report. Da-na-na, da-na-na.
Since we're on the subject, 6 Canadians inside the top 15 of the Pro Rodeo World Standings.
Whoa,
Oren Larson all the way up to number 7 in the bareback
he's
riding.
been cruising.
Man, 1 Hermiston, 1 Strathmore. He's got
Yeah.
83,000 one of the year.
He's a winning fool, that guy.
But then we've got 3 bareback riders in the top 20. Clint Lay's 16th, Luke Creasy's 19th, and Ty Tippetat's 20th.
He's been on fire too, Ty.
But he's still $18,000 out of 15th place. There's a big gap there between 20th and 15th.
And he's got what, a month left?
Yeah, really now, like today's this is the second full week in August. Today's the 13th. Yeah, the show's going to go out on the 15th. 6 weeks left in the season, so
But
20
that big
20
Northwest
grand to
run
win.
could do it.
yeah, and a guy could do really good in Puyallup, and there's lots to go in
Yeah.
left. Armstrong could be a good check.
Mhm.
There's lots left.
It's
So
not out of reach by any means.
yeah, they're ways away though, so they got to do some serious winning. But the Bulldogging, we got Scott Ginthner. He's only 14,000 out of first. He's second in the world in the
Holy
Bulldogging.
cow.
Curtis Cassidy's third in the Bulldogging. He's at he's about 17,000 away from first. But both
Those
them
guys
guys
are
should
kicking
be.
ass.
They'll be back to the finals for sure. Both making their.
They're going to make a run at a world title, those guys.
Yeah, they're right in it there. Tanner Milan also been on a streak here. He's 17th, so he's in the hunt.
Sweet.
Bronc riding, we got Zeke Thurston, number 5. He's got 96,000, almost 96,000 bucks,
Not a bad year.
and a new dad
New papa.
this week. Clay Elliott's just a little bit behind him. He's in 7th. Looks like he's going to go back to his. This will be Clay's third NFR
Third
already.
consecutive.
We
Is
will
it
be.
consecutive?
I think so.
Should be, yeah. Yeah.
I think you're right. Carmen Posabon looking to make her first trip to the NFR, the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo.
Wrangler.
10th in the WPRA World Standings, $84,000.
She's doing good too. She's kicking
84.7.
ass.
And she is in there right now by 26,000, so she's damn
Deep
near
in
punched her
there.
ticket.
Yeah, that's
I'd
awesome.
say she's
Good for
getting
her.
pretty close. So I'm gonna say Oren's already there, Scott's already there. So we got 5,
Zeke.
I think, already. And
For sure.
yeah, you got Oren, Scott, Curtis, Zeke, Clay, Carmen's damn close. So it's just a matter of our. We could have up to 9, depending on if all the other guys make it in there.
Tyrell can't be far out of it.
I didn't see him. He's not top 20, but I didn't look much farther down. But he's still he's a big gap away from 15th. But yeah, our bareback riders. I mean, if they could go on a winning streak, Clint Lay might make it back there. He's probably well, Tanner Milan's the closest to being in right now. But Clint Lay 16th. And here's another one though. Not a Canadian, but J.W. Harris. He's 15th in the bull riding, but it's super tight there at the bottom.
He's
right
climbed
now.
his way back though. That's
He's
huge.
got like $71,000 one. Like
Nice.
the bull riding's going to take quite a bit to make this year.
That's good though.
But
Riding a few bulls.
yeah, you got anything else for this show?
Talk about the PBA a little bit. Where our boys at?
Well, we can.
Don't have to.
The only thing that's really changed is that Lonnie's 25th.
Lonnie's
and
25.
Brock's 30th.
Dakota's still our guy at number 13.
13. Tanner's 23rd, I
Nah.
believe now.
Yeah, 23rd. Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah.
Cody Coverchuck's pretty close. That's about
Where do
it.
they go this week?
Nashville.
Nashville.
Smashville.
Oh, 100G to win there.
Yeah, the big major, so
Cool.
be a good show.
Hopefully those boys do well.
Thanks again, Terry Andryo, for being on the show this week.
Thank you.
Signing off, episode 19. See you in
2 weeks from now.
We'll see you
The
2
20th.
weeks for episode number 20 with a mystery cowboy guest.
Bye bye.
This is Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wasey, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.